Hey there, it's Marley. Welcome to my February reading wrap up. I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of February. I hope you guys had a great reading month. Let's get into mine. Let's go through a few stats of my reading month and then we can get into the book reviews for all of the books that I read during the month. So starting out in terms of how many books I read 8 books, which is basically the average of what I read every month. So that is pretty to be expected, to be honest. And then that equated to about 3,313 words, give or take. Hours listened was 16. I read audiobooks this month. Oh yeah, almost forgot. My average rating was 3.5. So pretty average there. Books acquired was 2, and own voices, I said about 4 of the books I read were considered own voices to me. In terms of the genre breakdown, half of the books I read this month were romance, which makes sense. I did a whole romance reading blog, which you can go watch on my channel if you'd like. I've been doing romance reading blogs for Valentine's Day lately. Spoiler alert, this one didn't go super well, but anyways. 2 of the books I read were fantasy, and then I read 1 contemporary and 1 nonfiction. In terms of the format that I read these books in, 4 of the books I read were ebooks, and then 3 were physical, and then only 1 audiobook. It was a pretty long audiobook, 16 hours. I'm kind of an audiobook newbie, but I feel like that's kind of long. In terms of audience, we read 7 adult books and then only 1 that was considered young adult. In terms of the author, gender, as always, I read mainly from female authors, 7 female authors and 1 male. And then in terms of author status, I read 50-50 between new authors and authors I've already read from before. In terms of the year published of the books I read, we were mainly reading newer releases. I read 2 books from 2023 and 2 books from 2022. And then 1 from 2025 and 1 from 2024, so all pretty new. We just had 1 from 2021 and the oldest was from 2016. So now let's get into the individual book reviews. We're going to start with my least favorite book of the month, and that was Pulling Doubles by Christina C. Jones. This is one of the books I read for that romance reading blog, and the specific theme I chose for that was to read books that were the highest rated on Goodreads that were on my TBR. What I realized is that a lot of indie published books have high ratings, I think because they don't have as many readers, so the rating just happens to be higher. So this didn't work out super well for me as someone who doesn't love independently published books as much as traditionally published books. No hate, like I think it's great that authors can publish independently, and I know so many people love that, but those books just don't tend to work as well for me. Anyways, the reason that this one in particular was on my TBR is because I had heard that one of the main characters had type 1 diabetes, and I have type 1 diabetes. That is kind of the reason behind my channel name, Type 1 Reader. So I always try to read any books that I hear have type 1 rep so I can see if they were good representation or not. As you can probably tell with this being my least favorite book of the month, I did not think it was good representation. I kind of went on a little rant in my reading vlog. If you want to check that out, again, I'll have it linked. But in terms of the plot of this book, we have our 2 main characters and they both work at this women's hospital. We're getting both of their points of view in it, and our main girl is actually a nurse practitioner. Our main guy is a doctor, and they are kind of butting heads at first. And I liked that dynamic of the enemies to lovers. They were really bickering a lot, teasing each other. It started out pretty good. Then they were hooking up pretty quickly, which I didn't love, but again, I was like, okay, it's a friends with benefits situation, that's fine. What really made the book go downhill for me was, as I said, when our main character, it is revealed, has type 1 diabetes. Initially, I thought it was going to be good rep because she was really pointing out how, you know, there's a misconception about the disease, about how a lot of people think type 1 is only kids get diagnosed with it, but she was diagnosed as an adult, similar to me, and so I really liked that aspect. But then from there, everything else about how they portray type 1 diabetes was not correct. I don't need to go into all the nitty-gritty details about it, but just know, as someone who's been living with the condition for nearly 4 years, it was extremely inaccurate. There was not proper research done at all. I don't understand why authors put these illnesses into their books and they don't want to do proper research. It just very much was seeming like she had type 2 diabetes, which of course is the type that most people are familiar with. So that was really upsetting to me to see that she was, you know, furthering this stigma about type 1 being the same as type 2, and it very much is not. So I encourage you to do your research or watch some of my videos on my channel where I talk about type 1, but didn't love this book for that. In terms of everything else about the book, it was just very average for me. So that's why I ended up rating it 2 stars. It probably would have been 3 if not for the diabetes stuff that I was mentioning. But that definitely dropped it a whole star. So would not recommend this book. And this is the one that was the slightly older book. So I'm not really sure many people would have it on their radars anyways, but that was just my experience with it. Next up, I read Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. So this is the nonfiction book, and it's the one I actually suggested for my book club. So it'll be interesting to discuss this with my friends. I will say I was a little bit disappointed with it, just because I've heard a lot of good things about this book on BookTube in particular from a few different people. So I was excited to get into it, but unfortunately I did only rate it 3 stars. So it was very just like average for me. Didn't hate it, but just didn't love it. Basically, Amanda is talking about the language of cults and how, you know, there are so many cultish groups. There's obviously the big cults that you think of that have led to the murder and the suicides, like Jonestown, and then there are, you know, Scientology, and then how we can get into more the nitty-gritty of how even fitness groups kind of use cultish language, and social media influencers use cultish language. And I was really interested in that part going in, of how these things you wouldn't necessarily think of as cults can be kind of like cults, but it just didn't really come to fruition fully for me. I feel like a lot of it was just kind of common sense in a certain way, when she was talking about pyramid schemes and how those are very much like cults. It's like it made sense to me, but it wasn't like mind-blowing. It wasn't overly teaching me anything that I couldn't kind of like figure out for myself. So that's too bad, because I don't read a ton of nonfiction, so it's disappointing when the books I do read are ultimately disappointing. But I still am proud of myself for picking up a nonfiction book and even suggesting it to my book club. So I am still interested in reading her other books that she has out though, so maybe I would like those ones more. Another book I gave 3 stars to was On the Same Page by Haley Cass. This is the one audiobook I listened to, and it's another one of the romance books I read in that romance vlog that I referenced before. So this is a sapphic romance between Riley and Gianna. It takes place with 2 different timelines. So in one of them, we're hearing from Gianna's point of view, and it's when the 2 girls roomed together in university. They also had a situation where they didn't get along right away, and then slowly throughout the book, you're seeing from her point of view like how they became friends. And then in Riley's point of view, which is more of the main one, we're in present day, it's I think 10 years later, and they've been friends all this time, and we're seeing like currently where they're at. They are just so close. They're each other's #1 support. And then due to like kind of a miscommunication, Riley ends up starting to have feelings for Gianna that she never had before. She starts having physical attraction to her, romantic feelings that she's never had before. It's always been platonic. So we're exploring this friendship that is finally becoming more. I thought it sounded really, really good going into it, like a lot of cute tropes. Overall, pretty good. Like I do overall want to recommend it, but as I said in my vlog, there were just a few things that didn't totally work for me. One of them was the audiobook, and the fact that the narrator's voice for certain characters really bugged me. So that's one of those things that I hate. Like I hate that that had to affect my reading experience. I kind of wish I would have just read this like on my e-reader instead. But anyways, there was that. And then also the fact that this book really dragged on. As I said, it was 16 hours of the audiobook, and I just feel like it went on a little bit too long. Also, it did get a little bit too spicy for me, but I think a lot of people are gonna like that. To be honest, they were pretty well written, spicy scenes and everything. I just feel like for me, it was a little bit too focused on the physical stuff rather than the emotional stuff. I wish it could have been a little more slow burn, a little more focused on their beginnings when they weren't really getting along and developing that. So yeah, a little bit disappointing for me, but I do still overall want to recommend it if you are looking for a female-female romance, just because I know they're not as popular as hetero romances. So I don't want to dissuade you from picking this one up. It just wasn't the perfect read for me, unfortunately. And the final book I read for that romance reading vlog was Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars, but again, even though that rating sounds a little lower, I do overall want to recommend this book. I just think, again, I picked up romances that weren't quite my ideal romance. So in this one, we're actually following a divorced couple, Yasmin and Josiah. Again, it's a dual POV. We get both of their perspectives. Yeah, they've been divorced for I think a couple years now. They're raising 2 kids together. They also own a business together. So they're still very much in each other's lives. And we're seeing that they still seem to have this attraction for each other and this love for each other. And so it's, you know, kind of forced proximity and kind of obviously second chance romance. I thought that this was a really unique romance because you don't often see a divorced couple with kids as the leads in a romance book. So I really liked that. Also has a lot of focus on like mental health, mental illnesses, and going to therapy if that's something that is important to you and you like to read about. This couple, as you're finding out, you know, how great of a relationship they had before and what went wrong and how it really was rooted in this tragedy that happened to their family and how it affected both of their mental health, and that's kind of what led to this divorce. So we're really diving deep into that, both of their healing journeys and how that kind of brings them back together. So a really beautiful story. I overall, as I said, really liked it. My issues again were that it was too long, and again, this might come from the fact that it's Kindle Unlimited. I think a lot of those books can be quite long because they're not getting edited down as much. So I do wish the pacing could have been a little bit better. I think the first half just started to get dragged out a lot for me and things could have been cut down. There was a lot of focus on the other women who are going to be followed in the next books in this series, and that's kind of a pet peeve for me. I just want to focus on the main couple of that book. I don't want to be hearing about the other couples in the companion series typically. Also, in terms of the spice, again, I feel like the spice level again was just a little too high for me and my preferences, but again, I know a lot of people probably would love the amount of spice that was in this book. So again, I do want to overall recommend this book. It just was not my perfect romance. It's not the one that I'm gonna be saying, you know, is one of my top romances, but still want to encourage you to check it out if it sounds interesting to you. All right, then a book I actually have here with me is The First to Die at the End by Silvera. This is the one young adult book I read. It is the sequel, or rather prequel, to They Both Die at the End, which was kind of a very popular young adult book. I've actually read all of Silvera's books other than his fantasy series, which I really didn't like. I DNF'd. But anyways, it's been a while since I read They Both Die at the End, and I've been putting this off, but whatever the TBR card I picked for February kind of led me to choose to read this book, and I'm glad that I did. I actually read it pretty quick despite it being kind of a thick book. We're following 2 boys again, similar to in the first book. So in this one we have Orion, who has always lived in New York. He actually has faced some tragedy in his life and he does live with his best friend's family. We also have Valentino, and he has just moved to New York to be a model, and his sister's going to be moving with him. They end up meeting the night that Deathcast is starting. So if you don't know what Deathcast is, it is this company and this technology that tells you when you're gonna die. So in the first book, it's already been established for like 10 years that whenever it's your death day, you get a call to let you know, and then you can do whatever you'd like on your last day. Make sure that you're having a good last day, you're spending time with family, that kind of thing. In the first book, these 2 boys end up spending the day together and falling in love. So this one's a little similar, where one of the boys gets a call, and that's why it's called The First to Die at the End rather than both. It's only one of the boys that is going to be passing away. It's just them having this great day in New York together, falling in love, and we are seeing some other points of view of people involved in this world, such as the creator of Deathcast and some other people that are involved. We also get shout outs to some of our characters from the first book in the series. We see them when they're younger in this book. So it definitely is one of those books that really tugs at your heartstrings, and it's trying to do that, you know what I mean? So I actually quite liked it. When I first started it, I was like, it's a little bit cringe, right? Like, it's YA, and Silvera can definitely be cringe in his writing. But by the end of it, I feel like it did get me, just with the emotional stuff that it was trying to get me with. I feel like it did succeed. So I think I will continue to read books from this series. I believe there's going to be a third one. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Not a terrible rating, just, I mean, not a favorite, but I think I would still pick up the rest of the books. All right, and then I did read Onyx Storm as well by Rebecca Yarrows. Obviously, this is the 3rd book in the 4th Wing series. I've really been enjoying the series. I haven't been obsessed with it like some people. I have not given any of the books 5 stars yet, but I have been really enjoying it. It is, of course, about Violet Sorengale, and she goes to this war college where she is training to be a dragon rider because there's this big war going on in her country. She ends up falling in love with a man named Zayden. They have definitely an enemies to lovers thing going on at first. The big draw of this book is, of course, the dragons. When you go to this college to be a dragon rider, you get bonded with a dragon, and that is who you are continuing to like train with. In this 3rd book, I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I just didn't love it, and I ultimately was a little bit disappointed in it. As a lot of people have been saying, I just feel like not enough plot was happening in this book. I feel like in the fandom, online, like there's been so many theories going around because there's been a lot of hints in the book towards different plot twists. I was just disappointed that none of these theories I've been thinking about really came true. And when you think about what's happened in this book, it's not a lot of plot. That being said, I do really like the characters of Violet and Xaden, so I enjoy reading about them. I enjoy reading about the dragons. They are great, and a lot of the other side characters and friendships I really enjoy. So that's kind of my main reason for enjoying this book, and just getting to see these characters do things. But in terms of the actual plot development, that's what I was a little bit disappointed with in this book. I think a lot of people agree with that. But yeah, I am still excited to keep reading this series and would ultimately still recommend it. All right, then my favorite romance book that I read this month was The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. Now, I know Christina Lauren's a pretty well-known author duo, but I feel like this book didn't get talked about a ton, unless, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it wasn't hyped up that much. And I'm here to say that it should have been. I actually gave this one 4.5 stars, so a near perfect rating. This is one I definitely would say is one of my top romances. So this is about Anna. When she was in college, she was definitely struggling for money, as many people are, and so she ended up getting into this marriage of convenience to Liam, who she calls West, because he also needed a marriage of convenience. They both wanted to live in this like family dorm room, so they had to be married in order to do that, but they were never very close. They literally were just like roommates. Anna thought that they got divorced after they were done school, and so it's been like, I think 5 years, and she's just been living her life, still struggling financially because she is an artist, or trying to be an artist, and her father is also ill, so she has a lot of bills that she is struggling to pay, working multiple jobs. And then Liam comes to her door one day and reveals that they actually are still married all of these years, and he needs her to come to his sister's wedding and pretend to be his wife. I mean, she is his real wife, but you know, they haven't been living like they're married all these years. She agrees to go because he's gonna pay her a bunch of money, because plot twist, he's super rich. His family is like billionaires. So she agrees to go pretend to be this wife, this perfect little wife for him, even though they like barely know each other. So it's very fun. It's a very fun setup. It's very similar to Honeymooners, which is my favorite book by these two, because it has the fake dating trope, and it has the like going on a vacation trip together, because they go to, I think, Indonesia for this wedding, and it's a very extravagant. One of the reasons I connected with this book so much is the humor. Anna in particular as the main character is super funny, so that was just so fun to read, such a joy. Liam as a hero is really great, and their relationship is just so cute. And then there's a lot of other fun drama going on. I just loved how they wrote this one. I don't know, Christina Lauren's such a hit or miss for me. I have loved some books and I have not, and this one just really worked, and so I really want to recommend this one, especially because I don't think it's been hyped up enough. So definitely put it on your list. It has a lot of spice. I know I've been hating on spice in this video. It does have quite a bit of spice, and it did work for me. I liked it. The only thing is it started to get a little bit dragged out, a little bit long, so I think that's the reason I took the 0.5 off. It just wasn't like 100% perfect, but yeah, pleasantly surprised by this book. Highly recommend. And then my favorite book of the month, the last book to talk about, and the one I just finished, is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is of course the sequel to Ninth House and the second book in the Alex Stern series. I read Ninth House a couple years ago and it was my favorite book of the year, 5 stars. So I've just kind of been putting this one off, but I'm so glad I finally read it because it was 5 stars again. I just feel like this series is so great, and if you're not reading it, like, I don't know what you're doing. But anyways, this series follows Alex Stern. Her full name's Galaxy, but she goes by Alex, and she has been recruited to Yale. She is working in one of their secret societies to basically be like the overseer of their other secret societies and like keep all the magic in check, because it is a fantasy, it's a fantasy book. Alex, the reason she's chosen, even though she has this dark past, is because she sees ghosts. She has this special power to see ghosts. So Yale of course wants her to be, you know, on their side working for them. In the first book, she gets wrapped up in this murder mystery situation where it seems like there's magic involved in these murders that are going on. So she's working with the police officer in the first book, Turner, and also Darlington, who was her mentor, has gone missing. So we have a couple different things going on there. In this book, Now there's more of a focus on finding Darlington. We have our group of main characters, Alex, Dawes, Turner, all really great characters, and I love that the dynamic between all of them. It's becoming very like found family. They are trying to save Darlington in this book, and you can imagine where he is. So this is just great for anyone who's into fantasy, dark academia, ghosts and demons and hell, and there's even some vampire stuff. If you're into any of that dark occult stuff, this is just great. It's so interesting to read about Yale because a lot of the info in here is true about Yale. It really is making me want to go visit New Haven and visit the Yale campus. And Alex is such a great character to root for. She's so like rebellious and fun to follow and brave and funny. I think that's one of the big reasons I love this book is the characters and the humor and stuff like that, but then also just the world is so interesting. So really happy that I finally read this and I think this is my first 5-star of the year. Really looking forward to any more books that come out in this series. I don't know if the third one has been announced or not, but this definitely left off with room for more books. Loved this one. And those are all the books I read this month. We had some ups, we had some downs, but I think overall I'm happy with some of these books I got. We got some new faves. Let me know how your reading month went in February. And yeah, I hope you have a great March. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye.